Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Pod. My name is Belle, Director of Marketing at AC Inc., and I am back with everyone's fave, JB. How's it going, JB?
It's going great, Belle.
How is your week going? How are things?
Good. Monday, starting off a week. Good, busy day, but looking forward to the weekend that's in front of me.
Yes, I know. I feel like Mondays are kind of a bit they're like good and bad in that way. I love a good Monday where there's like so many exciting things coming up, but then also if you're not feeling organized, it can feel like a bit of a race to get everything in place before you hit the week at a run. And that's how
That's
I feel
very true.
anyways.
That I try to keep my Mondays as empty as possible, but before I know it, they're full with
Oh,
random.
it's so true. Yeah. It's funny. I try to stack things earlier in the week. Like I would prefer to have it like crazy busy for the first 3 days and then try to keep some of the later days of the week a little bit more like project focused. But I guess it depends because obviously the work that we do and like you and I's roles look different, but working with clients and stuff, it's tricky because you have calls and then you have to have that all booked in call wise, but then also like project time and like having time to work on strategy or building up resources and stuff like that.
Not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, it never feels like there is, that's for sure. Well, I'm missing you a lot. At the time that we are recording this, we were just at the retreat a few weeks ago, the AC retreat. If you did not catch up on the episode where Jordan and I recapped that experience, that's a really, really fun one. And JB, I already miss seeing you in person. Man, oh man, we need to do
I
more of
know.
these.
I know. We live far too far from one another.
Too far, although not crazy far. I was checking out some flights. What is it, like 3 hours from me to you? It
I
must
think
not be
so.
that crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's doable.
Yeah.
We'll have to do our own little retreat or something. You and I can go do something fun.
I think we should call that a vacation.
No, that's true. That's true. Why does it have to be work? Oh, Belle. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to hop into the topic today. You have so much value that you share in every episode. And we did a cool roundtable, a special community roundtable all about field coach development and education just a couple weeks ago. And everyone was saying they're like big fans of JB's field coach and development content. So I had to get you back on, of course. We're going to be talking about strategic growth coaching calls. So if anyone is unfamiliar at all with strategic growth coaching or the AC philosophy on kind of building out coaching calls to help develop franchisees for success, help them achieve their biggest growth goals, all those things, we do have tons of episodes all about that, all about when to put that in place, how to start implementing it, all of that. So if you are interested in learning more about the specifics of that piece of it, we have tons and tons of episodes. I'll link a few in the show notes. But today, Jen, I really want us to talk about what those coaching calls look like. So maybe you just want to briefly describe kind of like really, really brief history of what it is we think about strategic growth coaching, and then we'll dive into the coaching call structure.
Sure. So, really quickly, this is hard for me, but I'll be really quick. Um, we see all the time that coaching looks like different things to different people, and a lot of times franchise systems, their business coaches really are firefighters, just dealing with issues at hand. Franchisee doesn't know how to do something or needs help with a problem, and it's just solving that problem and moving on. And that's not true coaching. So when we talk about strategic growth coaching, it's really that next level of coaching where we're not dealing with those issues. We're not solving their problems. We're helping them determine what their ultimate goals are and then how they're going to get there.
Mm.
And so you have to take out that firefighting piece. Although, every call there might be a little bit in there of a question or what have you, but that can't be the bulk of the call. It's really to help them take big steps forward toward meeting their goals. That's the essence of strategic growth coaching.
Yeah. And I think just to rewind even a little bit, for anyone who hasn't listened to a bunch of our past episodes, and again, I'll link some episodes for people to reference just so they can get a better understanding of kind of how to start implementing some of those things. But when we talk about field coaches too, I think Depending on the size of your system, you're totally right. Like sometimes those franchisees support people or the people who are designated to help your franchisees achieve their goals, go after the success they're looking for, the accountability, the training, all those things. It can look really, really different. Like sometimes it is going to feel a little bit more like problem solving, but to have a call dedicated specifically to the strategic growth and actually helping build out plans and action steps and all those kinds of things, that's what I think we are helping more and more brands really focus in on, and what we see actually lots of brands starting to get really, really excited about when it comes to development for their owners, and just creating, again, like more happy, profitable owners. That's obviously our whole goal. So I want to talk about what specific calls for strategic growth coaching, what do those generally look like? And honestly, go as micro details as you want. I think some people would be really fascinated as to like, how often do you do them? What do you talk about in those calls, right? Do you work off a document? Do you work off and I know that we have a whole system that we at AZ Inc. have built out, that here's the exact instructions. We come in and implement it even for different systems we work with. But if someone was kind of just getting started and really looking for some basic ideas of what that even looks like, what would you tell them?
I think before you can't just sit down with someone and be like, okay, I'm going to strategically growth coach you right
Yeah.
now. Right. So you have to work with your franchisee or whoever you're doing this with. It doesn't have to necessarily be a franchisee, but if that's who we're talking about, and really kind of figure out the plan of action. That's got to come first. And so in order to come up with the plan, you have to first know where you're at right now, looking at their business as a whole, whether it's their metrics, their staffing, their culture, their systems and their processes and that kind of thing, understanding where they are right now. But then equally important is, where do they want to get to? And that's really their goals. So if their goal is to hit, $1 million revenue in the next 5 years, well, it's great to have a goal, but how are you going to get there? And most franchisees, and I can talk for me, I was a franchisee for many years. It's kind of like, well, I don't know, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that everything goes that way. And, there is a saying around hope, but I don't know what it is around, like, if you had a dime forever, I don't know what it is, but anyway,
Inspired, Jen.
I know there is something really funny about hope, and it doesn't get you anything, is what it boils down to.
Totally. Yeah.
It's
if you don't have a plan in place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the action behind it. So really first, let's talk franchisee, with your franchisee, it would be, let's look at your business. Let's maybe do a SWOT analysis with them. Let's potentially do an accountability chart, to understand staffing. Go ahead, Val.
Oh, I just had a quick question too, because, and I totally forgot, this was actually in my head that I wanted to say first, but that totally goes into the beginning stages of all of this, in the creating buy-in, right? So kind of explaining like why we're going to be doing this. And that's great if you're getting a franchisee kind of fresh through that onboarding training process and just, hey, here's the culture of what we're doing here. Strategic growth coaching is part of what you're going to get from support, like as far as support from us, but getting that buy-in and then sitting down and doing SWOT analysis, the plan, like all of that, you're totally right. That goes before even creating your agendas, creating your accountability chart, like anything like that. I love that you're starting with that point. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that buy-in and that first step point, because I think that's so important.
It 100% is. And you're doing this with them. Too many people make the mistake of, I'm going to do it for you. Here's everything that's wrong with your business. Here's what you're doing right. Here's what you should change. And here are your goals.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you anywhere with franchising.
And it also might not apply to that owner too, right? Like every owner's goal can be so different. So if you're just going to go, hey, here's what it is, and hand it over, it might not even apply to what it is they care about or what they want their business to look like.
Yeah. And we see this all the time. So it's got to be together doing this plan, looking at the business, their input. They should be the ones talking most of the time, not the coach, and really looking at it together and then strategizing about what is your goal. Ultimately deciding what is your goal, whether that is $1 million revenue in 5 years. And I want to have a team of 25 people. I want to be working one day in the business, and I want to have a general manager that is going to deal with day-to-day operations and, marketing budget of 2,500 so that we can generate leads, kind of thing. Whatever all of those kind of goals are, it doesn't have to be just one. Really being specific about all of those goals will really help us as we're developing that strategic plan of
Mhm.
all of those buckets. And so when I say buckets, I'm talking about those things like your systems and your processes and your staffing and your marketing and your sales and that kind of thing. So creating that, or understanding your goals, and then creating your plan of action of how you're going to get there. That's what that strategic plan is.
Mhm.
And then it's that you asked about the calls. The calls that you're doing with your franchisees are, and the time between those calls are like your steps,
Yeah.
meaning your physical, I'm taking a step forward toward my ultimate goal.
Mhm.
And so we're, when we say moving the needle, that's what we're doing with them. We are helping them move that needle, or take one big step forward. Maybe it takes 1,000 steps to meet their goals, but our work together is taking some steps forward during our calls.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And then when it comes to what those calls actually look like, and I think this, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is a question we get a lot. And I think a lot of people, need to hear the piece about the buy-in and the planning and like getting everyone involved right at the beginning. That's like a very, we feel the need to say that all the time. But most of our questions, I feel like, revolve around what do we do in those calls? And I guess if you've done that strategic plan ahead of time, like if you do that first, those calls start to become maybe they just kind of evolve. But what would you recommend is the best way to do that kind of call? And I know it'll change depending on system and stuff, but I only say that because Brecken always says that. He goes, well, system dependent, situation dependent, of course. But if you were going to kind of say, or if your common answer that we give to those questions of what do those calls kind of look like after you've done that strategic plan and laid it all out and they've got their goals and they're excited about it, what do those calls look like in terms of duration, what's involved, how often they are, what does that look like?
So I love at least, and this is kind of on average, I love at least an hour biweekly.
Okay.
That's my preference.
Yeah.
You can do, more established people who are very accountable.
Mhm.
Um, you could do one call, whether it's an hour, hour and a half, whatever, once a month. For
Mhm.
those people that are those go-getters, that it's like, we've determined your action steps, now away you go and do them, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, if you've got somebody who's less accountable, then you do them every week.
Mm.
Um, really it's about the franchisee's need,
Yeah.
uh, the duration, for sure. So I'll just tell you my structure of a call, because they are very similar to what maybe a field coach would go in without a strategic plan, but it's really the way that you control it at the same time. So in a sense of, whenever the franchisee comes on, I just always check in. How are you feeling? Like, I
Mhm.
want to see what their mindset is, because if they are having a terrible day and are not like, this is not going to be good, why are we wasting anybody's time? Right. So
Yeah.
what is your mindset? How are you? What's going on? How are you feeling? And then I go right into, and sometimes that's kind of the same sentence. Like, what basically I want to find out what are some of their wins? Like, what's worked really well since I've seen you last? If you had to say you wanted something, what is it? And
Mhm.
it could be an action step that they did really well, or there was something came out of it. It could be a metric that, even, hey, I hit this amount in revenue. It could be Susie showed up to work every day last week.
Yeah,
It could be
yeah.
a million different things. So I always want to start with on those highs. And then I'm going to ask them, what do they want to talk about today? In the sense that, because again, we still will do some of that potentially firefighting, or they need our help with something. I
Mhm.
want to ask them, and I'm going to train them how to do this when I manage expectations with them, of talking about what our calls are going to look like. I'm just asking. I don't want to hear the scenario. I don't want to hear
Yeah.
the long story. We're not problem solving right now.
Ooh,
My
yeah.
question is really about, what are those things? I want to talk about Susie, who's not showing up to work every day. Perfect. We'll put on the list to talk about when we get there, kind of thing. And then if I have things, I'm going to say, okay, really wanted to ask you about that meeting you were going to do with your staff.
Mhm.
So we're going to put that on the list, and I will physically put it on my little advising note template that I have, so that when we get there, we'll talk about that. But then once we know what we're going to talk about, or maybe we've said in last week we were going to talk about, X, Y, and Z, that's on the list as well. But then the next thing is I want to make sure we're focusing on the action steps.
Mhm.
Let's visit, the action steps from last time. And I'll have that list because I create something called an action task tracker, where all the action steps, whether it's something I have to do or they had to do, is on this. And so it's shared with both of us. We can both look at it, because I'll tell you, if you don't do something like that, people are like, oh, I forgot I was supposed to do that. Or, oh, you said that, didn't you? Or, oh yeah, I told you I was going to do it. You need somewhere that they can access it when between sessions. So we'll go through it and we'll talk about those. Sometimes they did do it and it was super easy and it's completed. Great. Sometimes we'll need to talk more about it. It'll continue as an action task for next time. And other times there'll be bigger issues around it, and maybe we will tweak it a little bit, whatever it might be. So we'll go through those. I also, one of the things I like to do with franchisees when I'm doing my strategic growth coaching is, like, together we create a scorecard for them, so that we've got metrics are part of all of our calls. They decide the metrics that they need to have impact on. So, if their sales conversions are something that's getting in their way and it's one of our strategic action plan points, that would be something I'm looking at. So I will have had them fill that out, or at least know those metrics. So it can be like, okay, what was your conversion rate last week? And they'll tell me, and we'll talk through that. Very limited number of those. This is not a full KPI review. It's those key ones that are impactful to our strategic plan and to their growth. So we'll talk through those. And then the next segment is those issues. And so I really want to, part of the key with strategic planning or strategic growth coaching is controlling the conversation. I
Mhm.
don't want them to go sideways on something that maybe the help desk could be helping them
Yeah.
on, or they maybe should talk to another franchisee. So it's really having those techniques, and this is something that we will train and coach coaches on, is some of
Mhm.
these techniques around how to manage that conversation and making sure that we're staying on track to what we want to. If it's a quick solution that we can help give or quickly talk it through with them, then we want to do that. But we don't want that to undermine the purpose of the growth coaching call either. So we'll talk through those challenges, and then we will talk to the agenda items that maybe I have or are part of our call, in order to help them continue to take those big steps forward. And then we will determine those next action steps that have come from those discussions that we've done, and
Gotcha.
make sure they understand the plan, but then also what might get in their way of achieving those action steps. Because if we talk them through and have a plan of how to go around that obstacle, then they're much more likely to deal with it and go around the obstacle than let that be a roadblock and be like, oh, I can't do that action plan. Got to talk to Jen about it on the next call, because we will have gotten in front of it
Oh,
at
I
our.
love that. I love that. There's so many pieces of this, Jen, that I want to just highlight or kind of even just touch on. I think the big one that well, there's two big pieces that just really are highlighted in my mind around what these calls look like, what their purpose is, how you structure these in terms of the AC playbook of how we do it. And one is having a plan so that you're not going on a call and kind of letting someone else's problems or someone else's thoughts on something kind of guide that conversation. It's really having that plan that you work through every time, that you're both really aware of. You both know how it's going to work. You both know how the structure plays out in the conversation, so that you're actually accomplishing each step and having those strategic conversations every call. So that's something that really stands out, is like having that plan done up ahead of time and being clear, having everyone be really clear on what those calls are going to look like. So that it's not just us we're not just hopping on to chat, right? We're hopping on because we've got very specific things we want to go through. We know what the structure of this is going to look like. And then the other piece is I love this. I love that you guys do this with franchisees and just in any kind of strategic growth coaching, I think is so valuable, is having someone voice something they want to talk about or an issue that's come up early, but not having to deal with it right away in the conversation. That is so valuable. And I think it makes it so, again, we're hearing people and we're going, okay, so Craig, you've got some issues with Susie coming into work. Was that our example? Susie coming into work. And we know we've heard you and we're like, okay, we definitely want to be talking about that. Let's add that into the part of our call where we're going to address those immediate pain points or those challenges that are kind of coming up more real time. But we're not going to sacrifice that action step evaluation, the looking at the metrics, making sure we're on track for the next couple of weeks or the next week or whatever that timeline looks like, making sure everything is feeling on track and that we've covered that before we go back and tackle that kind of real time, maybe smaller challenge just in terms of the grand, like big picture. I love that tip. And I think that's something that a lot of people could implement in any kind of coaching or conversations where we're really we don't want to have the conversation get derailed and then feel like we've just spent an hour solving this one pain point that really is not, a part of the huge, bigger picture. It's actually something that's more real time that we want to solve just to make right now easier. So those are two things that are really, really standing out as far as key takeaways in that conversation for myself. Yeah.
Can I mention one more thing, Belle?
Yeah.
The other thing is though these are on your regular, whatever that looks like, weekly, bi-weekly or whatever, but then there is an additional piece to this, which is the deep dive, we'll call it. And that can be, I like to do things in quarters. So every 90 days we do, we scrap our typical agenda kind of process, and we just dig deep into the strategic plan, into looking at what tweaks do we need to do, how did we go the last quarter, let's look at our KPIs, maybe dig deeper into not just the scorecard but those KPIs, and it's just kind of a check-in, the health of the business overall, and are things moving in the positive direction, and potentially coming up with some new 90-day goals that we might be doing, and just tweaking whatever we need to do. And if you do that consistently, because that also can derail you, if it's like, oh, we got to add this bit to a strategic plan, you can note that somewhere, and then on your next 90-day check-in, really look at that as a whole, because then it's intentional and you've got that one purpose for that particular call that is not your usual, but you're still getting the important bits done during that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you're so right. I do some strategy work, marketing strategy work, but we'll still run into that every once in a while where we're focusing on maybe a very specific campaign or a very specific part of their marketing that we're wanting to optimize. And that has totally happened before, where we're going, oh my gosh, we need to add this to the bigger goals, like the bigger picture goals, or we need to add this as a bigger project to tackle this year. And you kind of end up spending a bit of time talking about that instead of focusing on the pieces that you're working on in that call. And you're so right, just jotting that down as a note to go, okay, we're going to review that in our 90-day, or we're going to review that in our every 2 months we have a call dedicated to the bigger picture, or whatever that looks like. I love that idea of being able to go, that's still super valuable. We want to have the time to talk about it. But if we try to talk about it all in this 1 hour call, first of all, there's only so much you can get done in a 1 hour call. But it's actually so nice to know that that's still going to get addressed when you're going over that bigger picture, or the 90-day, or even the year, or whatever that kind of bigger picture looks like in that call. I love that idea. Well, Jen, I know we could talk about this forever, and there are so many more points that we are going to be talking about in terms of the actual strategic growth coaching calls. I want to have a conversation around how to incorporate accountability into that, how to have those conversations. But we are going to finish up the episode for today. I want to thank you so much. That was so amazing. If people have questions about this, where would be the best place to get in touch with you, Jen?
Jennifer@angelacote.com.
Love it. Amazing. Yeah, Jen is just like filled. If you thought this information was valuable, like she is just a never-ending dictionary of information when it comes to this kind of stuff. So amazing resource for anyone looking for that kind of support. And if anyone does want to join the AC community who hasn't already, come join our roundtables. You can get all the details at angelacote.com/roundtables. Jen is on those calls. She is such a resource on those as well, for both established and emerging brands. And then we also have professional development roundtables for both franchise marketers and field coaches. So if you're looking at getting your field coaches some extra professional development, maybe even help them build out some strategies for their calls, or get AC Inc. involved in that way, please do reach out to us for that as well. Thank you so much, Jen. Go be awesome.
For having me.